Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I got a new Cardfight Vanguard DivineZ anime video for you guys today. Today we're going to be covering episode 12 and episode 13, finishing off this season of the series. So I waited for episode 13 to come out because episode 12 left off on a cliffhanger, and I wanted to cover the entire fight and finish off the season all at once. So we're going to talk about the setup for the fight, the actual fight, and then the ending of the series. So this is going to be a little bit of a longer episode. I've got a lot of notes, a lot of screenshots, even some clips, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you do, drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel. I've been doing a lot more Cardfight Vanguard content on the channel, and I would love for you guys to keep checking it out. But enough from me, let's jump into this episode breakdown. So, episode 12 kicks off with Akina talking to Gabrielius. And basically Gabrielius is asking Akina if he's going to forfeit the fated clash because, you know, according to his future sister, it's his fate to die. He basically says he's not going to do it. He's going to fight to save his sister, but he's also going to fight to save Suo. We see Suo chilling on top of the school, and he's still with that whole I am nothing, I have nothing. There's a weird scene with like a bird where he like reaches out for the bird to see if he would even feel anything for the bird. As he's reaching out, Akina shows up and grabs his hand. It's basically supposed to be like, it's not that he has nothing, because he still has Akina. Akina reminds Suo about that this is the last of the fated clash, and it's their time for both of them to put their wishes like up against each other. And Suo basically says he doesn't have a wish; he's literally just following his fate. We find out Akina's dad is actually a police officer, and he has a quote from his dad where his dad said that, you know, anger has limits, but sadness has no limits. And it's just a way of emphasizing the fact that Suo just has a lot of trauma. Like his whole I am nothing, I have nothing thing was a defense mechanism to protect him from his own sadness after losing, you know, his parents and the shock of the accident. But we'll talk more about that later into the episode. We see Akina talking to Mikoto as well as a lot of his other friends, and basically he tells them not to go to the fated clash because, you know, if he loses, they all get caught up in it and they all die too, and he wants to protect them. We also see him making plans with his non-card fighter friend, whose name escapes me at the moment. But we see now reacting to his text. She's not about it. She's going. Masanori meets Akina at the shrine where they first met. Akina's praying, and Masanori kind of gives him a little bit of shit for praying to a deity. But he's also in his own way encouraging Akina, and he decides to go to the fated clash after having a little talk with him about fate and how he thinks fate is cruel. We get one last shot of Taizo and future Hikari, and Taizo basically asks future Hikari if she thinks that he's going to win, and they both end up deciding to go. We get a nice scene where Akina basically says goodbye to present Hikari, and it's supposed to be a mirror of what happened in the previous episode with the future version of his sister, where it shows her perspective of him saying goodbye for the last time. And it's literally the exact same scene, 1-to-1. So I thought that was really cool that they threw that in there. And then it shows Akina getting to, you know, the little arena for the fated clash, and it basically goes through a memory montage of all the things that have happened to him since starting the fated clash, him getting into Vanguard, all the people that he fought, all the things that he learned, and it's basically to, you know, get him ready for the fight. We get a shot with him and Suo. They get ready. All the friends show up, ready to support him, and we get into the fight. Now, this is a long fight, especially for the Cardfight Vanguard anime. It's a full 11 turns, which is insane. I'm going to cover it in as much detail as I can without wasting too much time, but I will say this now. After the first initial turns, I say it in every video, their draw for turns and their energy charges, just assume that they did it. They don't announce it in every single turn, but they do it because they do end up using the resources, and obviously they don't just straight run out of cards in hand. So just from this point on, other than the first couple turns, just assume that automatically happened. So they get started, and up first is Akina. Akina rides a patrol of Gus Ventessa. He sets his engine generator, passes turn. Next we have Suo. Suo rides Holoraptor, sets his energy generator, charges 3. He attacks with Holoraptor to Ventessa. Akina doesn't guard. Suo doesn't get a trigger. Akina takes 1 damage. Akina doesn't get a trigger. Turn 2's over. Damage is 1-0 with Suo in the lead. Now, as we know, according to future Hikari, Akina's supposed to lose this match, and you'll see it as the match goes, where Akina gets really, really bad luck all throughout the entire first half of the game, up until, you know, a big moment happens, and we'll get to that in a second. But here's an example of what happens. Turn 3, Akina rides Knight of Great Advance Ascensior, and he uses Ventesta's skill. For anybody that doesn't know what Ventesta does, auto when this unit is rode by Ascensior, you call it to the rearguard and you soul charge 1. It also has a continuous rearguard skill that during your turn, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Raziel in its card name, it gets plus 2000 power. Well, he calls out Ventesta and he soul charges an overtrigger. Mind you, that's on a one of in the entire deck. But it's just the start of his bad luck. But he calls out Ventesta. On the other side, he calls Knight of Bowstreaks Niblerus. I hope I said that right. And he calls Aerial Sage behind his Vanguard. He attacks with Ventesta. Suo guards it. He attacks with Ascensior, supported by Aerial Sage. Suo doesn't guard it. Akina doesn't get a trigger. And Suo takes 1 damage, but Suo also doesn't get a trigger. He attacks with Nilberis. Suo guards it. Turn ends. Damage is even 1-1. Turn 4. Suo rides Vacant Fang. When he rides Vacant Fang, he uses Holoraptor's skill. For anyone that doesn't know what Holoraptor does. Auto, when this unit is rode by Vacant Fang, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, put all grade 1 or greater cards into your soul, and put the rest of them on your deck in any order. If you put 2 or more cards into your soul, draw 1 card. He also then calls Evoke Alchemist behind his Vanguard. Suo attacks with Vacant Fang, boosted by Evoke Alchemist. Akina doesn't guard. Suo doesn't get a trigger. Akina takes 1 damage, gets no trigger, turns over. So now, end of turn 4, damage is 2-1 with Suo in the lead. So a little bit of a slower start on Suo's side, whereas Akina tried to be more aggressive. Turn 5 though, this is where the grade 3s come out. Akina rides Faded One of Miracles, Raziel, and he uses Ascensior's skill. For anyone that doesn't know what Ascensior does, when this unit is rode upon by a grade 3 with Raziel in its card name, choose a grade 2 or less from your drop, call it to rearguard. He calls Hammer Breaking Knight Sadie, and then he uses Hammer Breaking Knight Sadie's skill, which is auto when this unit is placed on rearguard by a card ability, Counterblast 1, draw a card, and this unit gets 5000 power until end of turn. So road, called the grade 2 skill, power, draw. So nice pluses. He swaps around Ventesta and Sadie, so Sadie's in the front row, and then he calls Painkiller Angel behind his Nilberis. And now he goes into his attacks. He attacks with Nilberis, boosted by Painkiller. Suo guards this. He uses Nilberis' skill. For anybody that doesn't know what Nilberis does, it has 2 skills. Auto, when this unit is placed by a grade 3 or greater Vanguard's ability, this unit gets 10,000 power till end of turn. That one doesn't come into play just yet. But its second skill, Auto Rearguard, at the end of the battle that this unit attacked, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Raziel on its card name, Energy Blast 3, put this unit into your soul, draw a card, then you get to look at the top card of your deck and put it on the top or bottom of your deck. After that, he uses Painkiller Angel's skill. Painkiller Angel's skill is Auto Rearguard Circle. At the end of the battle that this unit boosted, Soul Blast 1, retire this unit, draw a card. So it gets to draw an additional card. But he makes sure to Soul Blast the Nilberis, because when he attacks with Raziel, he activates Raziel's on attack skill. Auto Vanguard, when this unit attacks a Vanguard, Counterblast 1, choose up to 2 units with different grades and a total grade less than or equal to the number of cards in your damage zone and call it to rearguard. So remember, he's at 2 damage. So he calls the grade 2 Nilberis and a grade 0. Protect Magic Prorobi, the draw trigger, he calls that to use it as a booster. And then Nilberis' skill goes off because it was called by a grade 3's effect, so now it also gains 10k. Suo doesn't guard the attack. Akina doesn't get a trigger. Suo takes 1 damage. He also gets no trigger. Akina then attacks with the new Nilberis. Suo guards this one, but then he uses Nilberis' skill again. Moves it to soul. Draws a card. Checks the top card of his deck. Top or bottom. But this is again where I was talking about Akina getting bad luck, because now he hasn't seen basically any triggers the entire game, and he just did his twin drive, still is getting no triggers. Lastly, Akina attacks with the Sadie column that he boosted up. Suo doesn't guard this one. Suo takes 1 more damage. He gets no trigger. Turn ends. The turn ends. Its damage is Akina with 2, Suo with 3. Akina is actually taking the lead. Now, before Suo goes into his turn, we get a little bit of back and forth with Akina, where Akina's trying to get him to respond. And like with Masanori, you kind of see Akina sink into the floor, almost like a pit of. It's supposed to be Suo's nothingness. But as we see Akina go through the darkness, he actually sees a little bit of what's left of Suo in the darkness. So it gives him, more of a reason to keep fighting. Now we go into Suo's turn, and Suo rides Faded One of Zero Blangmire, and he uses Vacant Fang skill. For anybody that doesn't know what Vacant Fang does, when this unit is rode upon by a grade 3 With Blankmire in its card name, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, put all grade 1 or higher cards into the soul, and shuffle your deck. If you put 2 or more, draw a card. He then calls Steam Raider Zamoog, I hope I said that right, and uses its skill. Its skill, auto, when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Blankmire in its card name, counterblast 1, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. Put any number of them into the soul and shuffle your deck. If you put 1 or more, you draw a card. Auto rearguard circle, when this unit attacks, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Blankmire in its card name, and this unit's critical is 1 or less, you can Energy Blast 3, it gains 5k, it gains +1 critical till the end of that battle. Super strong card. And then Suo does it again. He calls the second one, uses the same skill, checks the top 3, puts in the soul, draws a card. He calls 2 copies of Brainwash Swirler behind the 2 Zamoogs. And Brainwash Swirler is an older card, but just in case. Its skill is auto, when placed on rearguard, soul charge 1, and auto rearguard circle, when your card is put into your soul by soul charge, if your Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, it gets 5,000 power. And this stacks, so if you soul charge multiple cards, it'll gain multiple instances of 5,000 power. He basically calls one, soul charge, gains 5k, calls the second one, soul charge, the previous one gains 5k, and the current one gains 5k. So he's got an 18k booster and a 13k booster, but behind 2 basically crit rear guards. It was a little weird, but he attacks with Blankmire and uses its skill. So Blankmire's skill, auto Vanguard circle, when this unit attacks a Vanguard, bind up to 4 cards from your soul, minimum of 2, and you may draw a card. If you bound 4 or more cards, your opponent chooses 2 of their rear guards and binds them face down. And this unit gets 5,000 power for every 2 cards you have bound face down. Akina doesn't guard this attack. Suo does get a critical on his twin drive, and he gives 10,000 power to one of the Zamoogs and the critical to his Vanguard. Akina takes 2 damage, but doesn't hit any damage triggers. Suo attacks with one of the Zamoogs, he uses its effect, gains 5,000 power, gains +1 critical. Akina guards with 2 cards from his hand and his intercept, so 2 cards and his 1 intercept that he had, so his front row is clear now. Suo attacks with his other Zamoog and uses its skill. Akina is forced to use a perfect guard, because otherwise he would have taken another 2 damage. But the turn ends with Akina at 4, Suo at 3. So now Suo's back in the lead. Turn 7. This is where we start getting into some craziness. Akina Persona rides. Akina calls Knight of Gentle Beauty Nobia and uses its skill. Auto, when this unit is placed on rearguard, if you have a grade 3 or greater Raziel Vanguard, counterblast 1, look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Choose 1 grade 3 or less card from among them, call it to rearguard, and put the rest to the bottom of your deck in any order. And then if it's your battle phase, you reveal the chosen card and put it into your hand instead. It also has another skill, just in case you guys want to know. Auto rearguard circle, when this unit attacks a grade 3 or greater unit, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Raziel in its card name, Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets 10,000 power till the end of the battle. But off the first one, he actually calls the second one, so now he gets a front row. And then the second one, he uses that skill, and he actually calls a Gargeon off the top 3. And he finishes up filling his rear guards by playing another Gargeon from hand. For anybody that doesn't know what Gargeon does, it's just if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Raziel on its card name, it gets 5,000 power, 5,000 shield, so they're decent boosters. Now, Akina's trying to push for game this turn. He's trying to push really, really hard, so he ends up using Raziel's Divine skill. For anybody that doesn't know what his Divine skill is, his Divine skill is Act Vanguard Soul Blast 1, and you return all critical triggers from your drop to your deck and shuffle, and this unit gets +1 drive until end of turn. And then that Divine skill has a second half. Until the end of this fight, you cannot ride units without Raziel on their card name. And you, the player, get, when your damage check reveals a trigger other than a heal trigger, if your damage zone has 5 or more cards in it, choose a card from your damage zone and heal it, and then you lose that ability. Basically, it's saying is, one time only, if your 6 damage is a trigger that is not a heal, you can recover 1, so that way you stay in the game. But as we saw throughout the game, Akina hasn't really seen very many triggers, so he only puts back 2 criticals. But Akina attacks with Nobia boosted by the Gargeon, which is a pretty big row. Suo doesn't guard, but the first damage of the turn that he takes is a front trigger, so now he's got plus 10,000 for the rest of the turn. Akina attacks with Raziel, uses its skill. He calls Gigantic Masher and Painkiller Angel over the column he just attacked with. Suo guards with his over trigger, so it's not going to pass since Akina already soul charged his over trigger. Akina gets 2 criticals on his triple drive though. It's finally time to see triggers. He gives 1 to each of his front row rear guards. Akina goes on the attack with the second Nobia, and Suo has a flashback. Like he sees Akina reach for his card and has a flashback of a different hand over a card. But Suo guards with 2 triggers from his hand and an intercept because it was a big column, and then Akina attacks with the Gigantic Masher, and Suo guards it with a Perfect Guard. Akina uses the Painkiller Angel to draw an extra card, and then his turn ends. The turn ends with damage at 4/4. So we're back to even. Now turn 8, this is Suo's big turn. Suo Persona Reds 2. He calls a Mind Hacker. For anybody that doesn't know what a Mind Hacker is, it's similar to Gargaon, but it's for Blankmire. Where if you have a Blankmire Vanguard, 5,000 power, 5,000 shield. He calls it in the front row in front of the Brainwash Swirler, because remember, he just intercepted last turn. Suo uses Crimson Expeller in his Soul. For anybody that doesn't know what Crimson Expeller's Soul effect is, it's Act Soul, Counterblast 1, put this unit into your drop, Soul Charge 1, and the Vanguard gets 10,000 power until end of turn. So the reason he did this was to pump his Vanguard because he's going to use the Divine skill, and it gave his Brainwash Swirlers 5,000 each. Suo attacks with Zamoog, unboosted, and uses its skill. Remember, Energy Blast 3 gets 5k in a crit. And the reason he did that was so Akina would be forced to guard. So Akina uses a Perfect Guard. Now this looks a little weird. It's a small 15k attack. He could have intercepted. He could have used a 5k from hand, but he used a Perfect Guard. There's a reason he used a Perfect Guard because of how Blankmire's effect works. So Suo attacks with Blankmire, boosted by Alchemist. Remember, he's had the Evoke Alchemist since the beginning of the game. Suo uses Blankmire's skill. So he binds 4 from his soul, draws a card, binds 2 more of Akina's rear guards, and then gains 5,000 power for every 2 cards bound. And he has 8, so that's plus 20,000 power. On top of the plus 10k power from Persona Ride, plus 10k power from the Expeller. It's a huge column. But then he uses Evoke Alchemist's skill, which he didn't use last time. Evoke Alchemist has a continuous skill during the battle that it boosts. If you have a Great Theory Greater Vanguard with Blankmire, gets 5,000 power. But then auto Rearguard Circle, when this unit boosts a Great Theory Greater Vanguard with Blankmire in its card name, it gets an additional 2,000 power, so it's a 15k booster until the end of that battle. And if you have 4 or more face down cards in your bind zone, Counterblast 1, choose one of your front row rear guards and stand it. If you have 8 or more face down cards in your bind zone, that unit gets 15,000 power. So he restands as a Moog with another 15,000 power. Then he uses Blankmire's Divine skill. And for anybody that doesn't remember what Blankmire's Divine skill is, auto Vanguard at the start of the guard step of the battle this unit attacked. If you have 8 or more face down cards in your bind zone, you may have this unit get +1 critical till end of turn. If you did, your opponent cannot call or play Sentinels from hand until the end of turn. Choose one of your opponent's Vanguards, and all of your opponent and that unit's abilities are nullified until the end of your opponent's next turn. That card is nuts. Now, considering that he used Raziel's Divine skill, the 6 damage heal skill is now nullified until the end of his opponent's next turn. So a lot of people start thinking that this is going to be the end. Blankmire is huge. Akina can't possibly guard it. And then Akina does what a lot of us predicted, where Akina guards with the Faded One of Time, Liel Amorta. She blocks Blankmire's attack, shows her face, and then the episode ends. And boy, was so. I wish they never revealed this skill for Liel Amorta, because once we saw this skill, we knew how the fight was going to end. We knew that this was going to be how he was going to survive the Divine skill, and it was so easy to predict. But they ended up having the episode end on the guard, which was cool. It was a nice little cliffhanger, and now we jump into episode 13, which is the season finale. So episode 13 starts off with a flashback where we basically see Hikari and Akina talking on the beach, and we see Hikari basically decide to believe in Akina. And when she does, her Liel Immortal card starts glowing, and then it transforms. I thought this was a really cool detail, because whenever future Hikari was using it, its wings were open, you could see its face, but when she gives it to Akina, it closes its wings over its face. And even when it first appears to protect him, it still has its face covered, and then it opens up after blocking the attack. So then it jumps back into the middle of Suo's attack, where Akina used Liel Immorta, and we get to see Liel Immorta's defensive skill. For anybody that doesn't know its defensive skill, when this unit is put on Guardian Circle, discard a card from hand, put 2 cards from your bind zone to the bottom of your deck in any order, choose one of your units with Faded 1 in its card name, and it cannot be hit until the end of the battle. So basically it's a perfect guard without being a perfect guard. So of course Blankmire doesn't hit. Suo does his Twin Drive and gets no triggers. Suo then attacks with Zamoog, boosted by Brainwash Swirler, and uses the skill to get 5k in crit. Akina is forced to guard with 3 triggers. Remember, this attack is huge. This is the one he restealed with plus 15,000. After that, Suo attacks with the Mind Hacker that was boosted by the other Brainwash Swirler, and Akina doesn't guard it because it's for 1 damage, and he just goes to 5. But he also has no cards in hand. He used all of his cards to guard that last attack. The turn ends, the damage is 5-4, Suo's back in the lead. Now, this was a sad turn. Everybody thought that Akina was going to lose here. He went into his turn with no cards in hand and almost no rear guards. Akina starts his turn. He can't use Raziel's skill because Blankmire erases their skill for the turn unless you can ride another copy. And they even lose Twin Drive. Akina draws for turn and it's a critical trigger. So he's just like, shit, I got nothing. So he moves the Gargeon he had in his back or rear guard to the front. He still has a aerial behind his Vanguard, so at least he has a boost. He boosts Raziel with aerial, swings in. Suo doesn't guard. He's at 4. He is at 4 damage, so he is technically taking a risk. But with 1 drive check, he wasn't as worried. And even Akina's like, if I get a crit here, I win. And Suo's like, go ahead, go for it. He does his 1 check. He gets a draw trigger, so he gives the power to Gargeon and draws an extra card. He attacks with the Gargeon. Suo guards, turns over. Damage is 5-5. There's a little bit of a back and forth between Akina and Suo, and Suo is slowly starting to remember how it felt. Like, he says that his chest is on fire because it's almost like he's starting to feel excited. Now, remember, before this, Suo was saying he didn't feel anything, and he was acting like he didn't feel anything. So the fact that he's even getting annoyed with the fight shows that something's starting to change. But now we go into turn 10, and this is Suo's pseudo big turn. He had his big turn last turn. This is him trying to close out the game now. He switches Mind Hacker and Brainwash Swirler because he doesn't have any soul charges, so he can't boost up Brainwash Swirler anymore, so he's going to get rid of it. He calls a new Zamoog over it. He then attacks, unboosted again with the Zamoog, uses the skill, gain 5,000 power, gain +1 critical. Akina guards this one. Suo then attacks with Blankmire, and then uses its skill again, gets rid of Akina's last 2 rear guards and draws a card. And then uses Evoke Alchemist to restand the Zamoog he just attacked with. Akina doesn't guard, even though he's at 5 damage, because Blankmire's skill is no longer in effect, so Akina still now has access to Raziel's skill to save himself, and he was banking on it. So, off the Twin Drive, Suo gets a heal trigger, goes down to 4, but Akina, his 6 damage is a critical trigger, so he actually is able to heal, thanks to Raziel's Divine skill. And he says something that really triggers something in Suo, where he says, in Vanguard, you never know what will happen until the very end. And as soon as he says that, Suo starts getting flashbacks of playing Vanguard with his parents. And all these images go rushing through his head, and he hears his parents basically saying the same thing, talking about how his dad was saying even though he's in a desperate situation, he's never planning on losing. And we see young Suo smiling and really enjoying himself. And this does something to Suo where he starts crying because he finally remembers how he felt with his parents and how he felt about Vanguard. And this was a really touching moment because remember, up to now, he didn't have any memories before the accident. That's why he didn't remember how to feel. So once those memories started coming back in, so did the emotions, and you see it immediately on his face, that empty look that he always wore on that just made him look like an emo kid. You see like real life in his eyes again. And after Akina's like, you still love Vanguard, they basically start to go at it full power now. Suo attacks with his Zamoog, boosted by Mind Hacker. Akina guards, and then he attacks with the other Zamoog, boosted by Brainwash Swirl, the one that restood. And Akina manages to guard it, but again, he used up all his cards, but the turn's over. The damage is now 5-4. Suo's back in the lead because of that heal trigger. Alright, at this point, we get another flashback back to the beach with Future Hikari and Akina, where Future Hikari basically explains what happened to Suo, where, he lost everything. He lost his memories, his emotions, his family, and even he couldn't even bring himself to grieve. He was in so much pain that his mind was basically protecting itself. And that's why Akina wanted to be there for him, wanted to reach out for him, wanted to help him get himself back. And we get Akina's Future Hikari, insults him, calls him an idealist, and it's kind of funny. But now we go into turn 11, and this is the final turn. This is Akina's final turn. Akina again starts off with no cards in hand. He draws for turn, and then on once he gets to main phase, he Energy Blasts 7, draws another card. He calls a Palladium Zeal Dragon and a Shivalmia, I hope I said that right, which is a perfect guard and a critical trigger. He has no other rear guards, no front row. But he attacks with Raziel first, boosted by the Shivalmia, and uses Raziel's skill to call Knight of Bow Streaks Nobiris in front of the in front of the perfect guard, and he calls Gigantic Masher on the other side. This is actually not a bad move because Neobia gains 10k, so that's a 26k roll on one side, and then Gigantic Masher gains 15, so that's a 28k roll on the other side. So seeing this, with only a few cards in hand, Suo decides to not guard it and basically bank on it. And Akina gets a critical trigger on his second check of his drive checks. So with no damage triggers, Suo goes to 6, Akina takes the game. And that's the end of the final game of the Fated Clash. There's a little bit of post stuff after the match is done, just basically closing out the story. I'll go over that real quick. But Akina wins the Fated Clash, and in the end of it, he ends up befriending Suo. They end up shaking hands, and Suo genuinely enjoyed the game. But now that Akina's won, he has the power to make his wish come true. He ends up wishing for his sister to get well. We get this cool scene of the Fated 1 symbol, and then the screen goes white, and basically we get a little bit of a time skip. We jump over to Akina getting home, and Akina finally gets home to his sister. You know, with Future Akari, he never made it home, so that's a big deal. And he basically has a breakdown seeing his sister up and at him and smiling at him. But then we also get a mirror of that where Suo gets back to his house, and he basically tells his uncle, you know, I'm home, I'm finally back. And his uncle is like happy that he's home and happy that he can see the difference. Now we get a big time skip to, I don't know how far into the future because they don't tell us, but we see Hikari and Akina talking about meeting up after school, and they basically walk into school together, and you would never think there was anything wrong with her. After the little back and forth, we get a flashback of Akina returning Leon Morta to future Hikari, and you actually see the card art transform again. And future Hikari basically says her wish was to come back in time and save him, and now that time's been changed, she's gonna go back to her time. And Akina's like, are you okay with that? And she's like, yeah, it's no big deal. And then she leaves. We see Akina talking to his friends. He ends up going to have lunch with Suo, and Suo is eating his food, and he eats an omelet that Akina made for him, and he's like, it reminds me of my mom's. And Suo basically says how he didn't have any of his memories before the accident, but now he's starting to get them back little by little, and he thanks Akina for it. And he ends up telling Akina that he wants to fight him again. And this time you could see like he makes a goofy face. He wants to have fun again. And back in their class, Akina's friend, I guess NPC number 2, basically is just like, hey, you want to come hang out? And Suo's like, nah, he's gonna fight me. He's gonna card fight me. We already set that in stone. And the entire class is like shocked to see Suo actually talking. Mikoto shows up in the class basically asking the same thing, like, what's Akina doing after school? And everybody bugs out because, you know, she's a celebrity now. She went back to being an idol. And they're like, why are you so casual with Akina? Oh my god. Jump to the end of the day, and they're all gathered up at the restaurant where Akina and Nao work, and they're all taking orders. Akina helps Nao make some food, and Nao tells Akina about what's going on with her. Now, if you remember with her, she wanted to be the Fated One of Unparalleled, and she basically wanted to become a pro Vanguard fighter, and after winning the tournament that we covered a couple weeks ago, she is now in the final stages of becoming a pro card fighter, and so she's still making her dream come true. And then we get the bittersweet ending. So as they're all gathered up together, they're all headed over to Megumi's card shop. Megumi from the Overdress seasons. We see future Hikari on top of the roof looking down at them, basically talking about how this is what she wanted. She's happy she changed time, and it shows her holding the Leon Mortar card, and she thanks it for granting her wish. And then we see her hand kind of go translucent, and she gives up some monologue, and then she starts to fade away. We find out through a flashback with her and Gabulius, where Gabulius basically warned her that this was a one-way trip, that if she went back in time to save her brother, there was no way for her to get back, and she might just very well disappear because of the absolute force that is time. And that's what happened to her. She didn't want him to worry, that's why she said she was just going back. The only one that might have known what was going on was Taizo, because we see Taizo holding the mask and looking off into the distance, looking sad, so it looked like he knew what was going on. And the last thing we see, semi-last thing that we see, is Akina and the crew get to Megumi's card shop, and they're all getting ready for a card fight, and we get their final, stand-up Vanguard before the end of the season. and everybody's smiling, everybody's having a good time, and that was the end of the episode. Or was it? There was an after credit scene for this one, and it's a little bit weird. We get a monologue from Masanori basically talking about, this isn't over. He still wants to know why the Fated Clash was held, because nobody ever told him. And he's kind of monologuing to Gab Willius, who wasn't really there anymore. But then we go to the arena where they had the Fated Clash, and we see a new floating plushie, kind of like Gab Willius, but it sounds like a feminine voice, and almost like she's like aggressive, or I think it's supposed to play it off that she's evil. And she's talking about how it was disgusting that this happened, but she wants to use this arena where the cards and the fighters fought to change fate, and now that fate's changed, a new clash is going to happen, and the next fight is going to be called the Destined Showdown. And then we see a new symbol appear over where the Fated Clash symbol used to be, and that's actually where the episode ends. So I thought this season was really good. I thought it was beautifully animated. I thought it had a decent story. I really liked how much detail they went into with the card mechanics. I mean, we were able to cover it all really, really well, where we've had seasons before where they don't do any mechanics or very little. So I'm very pleased with it. And as for this Destined Showdown, my guess is we're going to get something similar to Reverse. Not necessarily like people turning evil, but I think there's going to be the Fated ones and then the Destined ones, and they're going to end up clashing. That's what I think is going to happen in the next season, which would be cool to see all of these characters, on a team together, working together. Mikoto, Suo, Akina, Taizo, maybe not Taizo because he has a life, but now like all of them coming back to basically, protect the world because they have a whole new timeline to worry about from this new threat. But let me know what you guys thought. Let me know how you guys felt about these two episodes. Let me know how you guys felt about this ending fight or the end of the season. A lot of people said they thought it was really emotional. And let me know what you guys are speculating for the next season, because it's gonna come quick. But if you guys enjoyed this video, again, please drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel. A lot of new Cardfight Vanguard content on here, and I really appreciate you guys' support. If you guys want to check me out on social media, those links will be down below. If you guys want to come check out my Cardfight Vanguard stream, I stream Cardfight Vanguard Saturday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I would love to have you guys. We build decks, we talk about the anime, and sometimes we just end up fighting against the viewers or other people online, and it'd be a lot of fun to hang out. But that is it from me. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.